Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kayla and it's time to crack into a good book. So today's video is going to be, I think, the 5th installment of my urban fantasy paranormal romance recommendations video series. And the topic today is going to be like descendants of gods or like godlike beings, I guess. One of the series is kind of a stretch, but it fit the most closely, I think, in this category, so I'm just going to talk about it here. So I've got 3 series again to talk about today. And the first one I think that I'm going to talk about is the Signs of the Zodiac series by Vicki Pedersen, I think. This is a 6-book series and all books are out. This, again, is an older series. I think the last book was published in 2011. I will say it looks like on Goodreads, I've rated most of these like 2 or 3 stars, which is a little surprising to me because I thought I liked them more. But that being said, I'm still going to talk about them here because, like, I guess even though I didn't quite love them, I think that some of you might enjoy them, and like, again, it's not one that I typically hear talked about on BookTube, so I figured I would just mention it. The first book in this Signs of the Zodiac series is The Scent of Shadows. So this takes place in Las Vegas, and our main character, Joanna, when she was 16, she's like brutally assaulted and left for dead, and like, you know, it's like by rights she should be dead. She is a photographer, so she like prowls Las Vegas, I guess, after sunset, where there's like a, you know, a secret sin city where light battles shadow, and she's like trying to figure out who she really is and like her powers and everything. So she's being hunted, and like, you know, various like shadowy beings are trying to like capture her for their own. Obviously there are some content warnings, like I don't remember, again, this is one I read a really long time ago. I don't specifically remember if they're like all throughout the books, or, I mean, obviously, I think that this first book, I don't remember if it like goes into detail about what happened to her, but obviously like that's part of the premise of the book, and like it does exist. So just be aware going into it. Basically, like, she kind of joins up with this group, and they're kind of superhero type beings. And I think they're all, like, obviously it's Signs of the Zodiac. I think they all have different abilities that correspond to the different signs of the Zodiac. Looks like in the second book there's some sort of toxic virus thing. In the third book she's being stalked by a doppelganger. And, like, she learns more about, I guess, her own family. Fourth book, there's kind of like a rogue agent, I think, that she has to figure out what's going on with that. The 5th book, I think she becomes mortal again. The 6th book is kind of like the ultimate showdown of everything that's happened. So I will say, like, again, not my highest rated series. It is very brutal, it is dark, so just be aware going into that. But if you are kind of interested in this premise, definitely like check out the Goodreads reviews, see what you think, and, you know, see for yourself if you think you'll like that. So the second series that I'll talk about today is the Cal Leandros series by Rob Thurman. So I thought that this book series was finished, but Goodreads seems to have an 11th book listed that hasn't come out yet, so like this may or may not be finished, I don't know. But there are 10 books out in the series, and the last one, it looks like, or the 10th book was published in 2015. So like, I did think that it was concluded, but I don't know. The first book is called Nightlife. The main character, Cal, is like half monster, and they call these monsters Grindles, and they're just like really powerful evil beings. Throughout the series he kind of has to struggle with his own background and just like, I don't know, this really traumatic past, and just like, you know, fight against these creatures that still want him. This takes place in New York City, and we follow the Leandros brothers. So there's Cal, and then there's Nico. They are, I think, Romani, if I'm remembering that correctly. There's a variety of supernatural creatures here. We've got, like, trolls, boggles, vampires, werewolves, you know, and then these, like, obviously, like, the Grendel creatures that I've mentioned. And it's kind of hard to describe them, and because, like, I think I've only seen them in this book, so they're kind of a unique evil creature, I guess. His brother Nico, like, gives up, you know, going to college in order to take care of Cal. They, like, kind of are on the run to avoid Cal being captured again by these creatures. So I guess generally at some point in Cal's life, or fairly early on, Cal, and I think this is like kind of mentioned in the first book, he gets kidnapped by these Grendel creatures, and like doesn't really have clear memories of it. Like, he ends up escaping, obviously, and like, yeah, doesn't really remember what all has happened to him, but it's like obviously very traumatic and really awful. So again, this is kind of one that has some content warnings associated with it. The first book, Cal is like learning about why these Grendel creatures want him exactly, because he is essentially the key to them invading Earth and like taking over. So these creatures like kind of are make an appearance throughout the book series, and like they're like the main bad guy. The focus isn't so much on them in some of the books. The second book is a lot about like a werewolf mafia. The third book, there's some sort of like malevolent evil with ancient powers who's killing humans. Yeah, the fourth book focuses more on these Grendel creatures, which like they do have another name, but I'm just referring to them as Grendels for now. Cal and Nico kind of work as private investigators as well. I think Cal also works as like a bartender at this like supernatural bar. Yeah, so I think there are some like angels in here as well. One of the books has something to do with like a crazy supernatural serial killer. It looks like I did rate all of the books that I've read 4 out of 5 stars. So like I did very much enjoy the series. Obviously, like if Rob Thurman continues to write them, I will pick them up. But again, don't know if that's actually happening. It's a really interesting urban fantasy series. I don't feel like I've heard anyone talk about this again. And again, just like with the content warnings, it is dark and there are some very brutal moments in it. But again, if it's something that sounds interesting to you, definitely check it out. So the last book series that I'll talk about today is the Nikki Glass series by Jenna Black. This is the author of the Morgan Kingsley series, which I talked about in my like demon video. So the first book is called Dark Descendant. This is a 4-book series. All books are out. Nikki discovers that she is like an immortal huntress. So she is a descendant of Artemis. And like generally the premise here in this series is like we have various people who are descendants of various gods. Not only in the Greek pantheon, but other pantheons as well. She like kind of learns that she is the descendant of Artemis and like meets up with these other descendants of various gods, and you know, including a descendant of Eros, a descendant of Loki, and a descendant of Kali. A lot of the drama comes with this other group of descendants of gods who call themselves the Olympians, a fellow group of immortals trying to destroy all the other descendants who like won't join them. Nikki starts off as like a private investigator. Again, I guess that's the common theme here. She can like track down anybody, and so that's like kind of one of her abilities as a descendant of Artemis. In the first book, one of her clients is a descendant of Hades, and like that's kind of how she learns about her abilities and like meets up with these other people. So the second book deals with Anubis and his descendants, and like these hellhounds can injure these immortal beings. The third book kind of deals more with like, I guess, the conflict between like her group of immortals and the Olympians. And then the fourth one is like kind of concerns the fate of all humanity. There's definitely some romance here. A lot of the characters experience growth over time as they like try to figure out their abilities. This is also one that I read a while ago, so I can't remember if there are specific content warnings. Generally, Nikki is like a really kick-ass female main character, and she is just like super fun. I really enjoyed the romance in this series. I really like the premise where, you know, I find various like mythology is really interesting, so just like reading about various descendants of gods is super cool. This is not one that I've seen recommended on BookTube, so I highly recommend checking out this series. I gave all of the books 5 out of 5 stars, so definitely loved it. Of the 3 series I talked about today, I think this one probably has the most wide appeal, I guess, and probably the one that I would recommend the highest. Let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these books or think you might pick them up. I hope you're having an excellent day and are reading something awesome. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up, as that would certainly help me out. But with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up here and see you in the next one.